Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am DK Bhattacharya and I will be talking about Upper Paleolithic culture of India. Before I talk about Upper Paleolithic culture of India per se, I must talk about the Upper Paleolithic as a cultural region in human civilizational history. That's primarily because when it happens, the Upper Paleolithic culture comes, it comes with a new fossil kind called Homo sapiens sapien, which is also referred to in literature as anatomically modern Homo sapien or AMHS. Anatomically modern Homo sapien comes associated with Upper Paleolithic tools, and they are dated to around 40 to 50,000 BCE. So this is the way Upper Paleolithic is conceived of all over the world. But the character with which these occur in Western Europe is entirely different from the way it occurs in Central Europe, Balkans, and Eastern Europe. Let us look at the way it occurs in India, or does it occur at all in India? But the period within which this transformation takes place, probably the authors are as anatomically modern Homo sapien. This period is 40 to 50,000 years BCE, when Upper Paleolithic begins with a new fossil kind as the author. The Upper Paleolithic cultures of Western Europe is a very distinctly defined periods of four traditions: Perigordian, Aurignacian, Solutrean, and Magdalenian. In many places, even the Epipaleolithic is joined with this succession pattern. We don't know whether these four traditions have four different authors. That's a different issue. But then the whole cluster of these four traditions seem to be authored by anatomically modern Homo sapien. But it's not true for all over the world. Let us look at the African development. We do not have a development of four different traditions in the last pluviation in East Africa. And the same way, when you look at India, the first question is, do we have to look for Upper Paleolithic at all? Because there are many sites in India where hand axes continue, and the next stage is microlith, Holocene deposit. And you have this situation in a site called Paisra, which is in Jamui district of Bihar, where you have a huge deposit of hand axes, and that is Lower Paleolithic, and then the next deposit is microliths, that is Holocene, and it's a date of 7000 BCE. So this is a scenario where you say, well, the entire Pleistocene therefore has no anatomically modern Homo sapiens. It is only the hand axes continuing till the end of Pleistocene. And you don't have a Middle Paleolithic, you don't have an Upper Paleolithic. So it's not a global or pan-Indian phenomena. Even then, when the first discovery of Upper Paleolithic was made in a stratigraphic context, I'm not talking of Camiad and Burkitt. Camiad and Burkitt found beautiful blade tools from surface, did not take the courage of calling it Upper Paleolithic, but just called it Series 3. Series 3 culture of India. Good enough. But nobody is denying that there are no Upper Paleolithic tools in India. There are a large number of Upper Paleolithic tools found all over India, but they don't have a separate geochronological context. If the finds are found with flake tools in the same context, you can't call it Upper Paleolithic. You can call them Upper Paleolithic content in a Middle Paleolithic context. So this is a kind of a problem which is more referred to the stratigraphic context rather than the tool types. Upper Paleolithic is very well demonstrated in most of India in terms of the tool types, but it does not have the stratigraphic context. The first time in 1970s, the G.R. Sharma of Allahabad University demonstrated a huge section in Belan River, and there they have found layers of third gravel dated to 19,000 BCE having only blade tools. So he could prove to the world that here is Upper Paleolithic development from within the Middle Paleolithic layer. And this Upper Paleolithic, the tool types are both Gravettian as also Aurignacian. So you have a Aurignatio-Gravettian content of blades and the burins and end scrapers and so on. So that's the first time you start accepting Upper Paleolithic as a legitimate cultural stage of India. There is a problem. The problem is, if you don't have a legitimate cultural stage in India of Upper Paleolithic, what do you do about Homo sapiens sapien? That means, suppose there is a site, there is no Upper Paleolithic, like Paisra, I told you, there are Lower Paleolithic tools, and then comes the microliths, then do you have to accept that there was no Homo sapien here? Do you have to accept that in Bihar, you have only Lower Paleolithic or Homo erectus continuing even today? Now that's not possible. So the problem is Upper Paleolithic cannot and need not be always associated with Homo sapiens sapien, unlike what has been claimed in Western Europe. In Western Europe, Upper Paleolithic sites are always associated with the three large races, the Cro-Magnon, the Grimaldi, and the Chancelid. So we have accepted that Upper Paleolithic is with anatomically modern Homo sapien. But when you come to India, the scenario changes. We do not have a fossil, number one. We do not have any fossil of that period. The only fossil in India which comes from Narmada region, from a district of Sehur, is called Hathnora, and Hathnora is at the most dated to 60 to 70, about 600,000 to 700,000 BCE, but it is a late erectus. The estimated cranial capacity is 1400 cc. It can't be early erectus. So it can't be lower Paleolithic, but there are tools that has been found with it associated are lower Paleolithic. So you have the only fossil evidence of a late erectus coming from India. We do not know whether the late erectus continued to develop into the modern people of India, or they were annihilated, replaced by out of the Africa anatomically modern Homo sapien, who brought with them Upper Paleolithic tools and destroyed the pre-existing early sapiens and established themselves as Homo sapiens sapien, and they are our ancestors. It is very difficult to demonstrate this unless you have Upper Paleolithic sites in India. So when the Upper Paleolithic site was established with carbon-14 date in Belan, we started looking for more evidences of Upper Paleolithic sites. We started looking for it all over India, and we found there are two gravels. So even if there are blades, we can't prove them as Upper Paleolithic because it comes from the same gravel from where flakes come. There was a site called Renigunta that was discovered in 1970s, late 70s, by a man called M.L.K. Murthy. This is on the river Rallakallava in Andhra Pradesh. It's not an excavated site, but it was meticulously explained in terms of the terraces, and the tools that were found seems to be of late Pleistocene duration, and it was without any change of raw material. It is fine-grained quartzite, beautiful blades, and there is about 6 to 10% burins, beautiful end scrapers. So it looks like any Upper Paleolithic site of Western Europe. It compares very well the stone tools. There is no bone tools, of course, and there is no art objects. So the Upper Paleolithic of Western Europe is characterized by stone tools, bone tools, art objects, and we have neither of them in any of Indian sites, neither in Belan nor in Renigunta. Let us look at the tools in Renigunta. The tools that come from Renigunta have almost carbon copy parallel tools of Aurignacians and Gravitians in Europe. What happened to Solotrian? What happened to Magdalenian? We don't have it. But Renigunta tools have been analyzed very well, and it says 6% burins and about 13% retouched blades and some backed blades and a large number of end scrapers. So you have a basic generalized Upper Paleolithic that occurs in the fag end of Pleistocene, let us say around 27,000 BCE. We don't have much of Renigunta dates. Renigunta is a surface collection and it doesn't have a date. So there was a kind of a feeling that if you don't have Upper Paleolithic all over India, what do you do about the authors? Because we're already committed elsewhere, and mitochondrial DNA analysis that has been done elsewhere also has proved that the haplogroup M and its haplotype L3 has crossed over from northeast of Africa, from Ethiopia, and crossed Sinai, and through Sinai it entered into Afghanistan, and then the western gate of India entered into India through the coastal road and passed on. This is Homo sapiens sapien, which evolved in Africa and passed over India as the bridge to go down to Southeast Asia up to Australia. So India as a land bridge through which Homo sapiens sapien must have gone. So we would expect that all Middle Paleolithic sites in a jiffy will be changed into Upper Paleolithic sites because the Homo sapiens and sapien were migrating through it. Either you say that we will not equate biological evolution with cultural evolution. Upper Paleolithic is a cultural content. Biology, like the mitochondrial DNA or out of the Africa model talk about, we are not going to link with it. Or you say, well, there seems to be a big lacuna. There seems to be a big lacuna because we do not have Upper Paleolithic sites all over India. There are many sites in India. In fact, usually all the sites in India has a lower Paleolithic, some level of Middle Paleolithic, and then microliths. There is no Upper Paleolithic. In fact, if you have two gravels, then you can't expect the Upper Paleolithic. So this scenario basically denies the arrival of out of the Africa Homo sapiens sapien. And it's a very serious issue. The serious issue is that if you go by mitochondrial DNA analysis, then you have to accept that Homo sapiens sapiens did not stay in India. And all Indians today are the descendant of Homo erectus, descendant of Hathnora, late erectus. And this is the difficulty of accepting the biological evolution with cultural evolution. Even then, there are a segment of anthropologists who are trying to combine the two and say, no, they did not replace the late erectus. They did not replace the Hathnora variety. The anatomically modern Homo sapiens came from Africa, entered India, and married them and mated with them and created a kind of a early sapien, which is now the ancestor form of the Indian population. Well, it is acceptable, but then we have problems about accepting trans-species mating. If the species is different, there cannot be any mating. Then Upper Paleolithic therefore has to be taken as a total indigenous development. If it has not come with AMHS or anatomically modern Homo sapien, then where does it come from? So origin of Upper Paleolithic in India has to be taken as totally indigenous. We have Belan as a very good example. We have Renigunta as another example. Then we have been thinking, well, there should be some bone tools. And there was another in Andhra, another rock shelter site discovered, which is called Muchchantara Chintamani Gavi. Muchchantara Chintamani Gavi has been excavated by Thimma and Murthy, and they have found a huge number of bone tools. They're not really tools. So here you have bone tools, there you have blade tools, but you have only 3 or 4 sites. What happened to Upper Paleolithic all over India? Now we have to address the issue in terms of this. So two primordial questions. The questions are origin and dispersal. Where does it origin and how does it origin? When you talk about the origin, you talk about two varieties. You talk about exogenous origin or indigenous development. If you talk about exogenous origin, I think a site called Didwana, which has a region in Didwana, is a big region called Singhitalab. That site needs to be considered. Now, Singhitalab is in Rajasthan, and directly on the way, if there has been any migration from the western corridor of Balochistan and the various passes there, then it must have passed through Rajasthan. Let us accept that it has passed through Rajasthan. Let us look at Singhitalab. Singhitalab does have a beautiful Upper Paleolithic development right lying over Middle Paleolithic layers. And these are beautiful blades and end scrapers and so on. So anatomically modern man has entered, whatever the mitochondrial DNA talk of. In terms of culture, we do have evidence of Upper Paleolithic entering from there. But where did he go? Where did he go? I mean, does it stop at Singhitalab? No. So we look at the development of Upper Paleolithic in a meticulous way all around the area of India from where the Upper Paleolithic people must have migrated and then passed on to Southeast Asia. Then we look at the sites of Madhya Pradesh, let us say. If they have passed through Madhya Pradesh and went along Narmada, we have evidence that they did not go along Narmada, they crossed Narmada and went along the Godavari. They went along, south of Krishna, you have very little Upper Paleolithic sites. So they went along Godavari. But before that, let us say, went along Narmada, we have a beautiful site called Bhimbetka. It's a primary site, it's a rock shelter, and it has a very well excavated evidence, and the evidence shows beautiful Upper Paleolithic tool types. Not anywhere different from what has been observed in Belan. So you have a large number of Upper Paleolithic tools coming from central India. There are other sites also, we'll not talk about it, but let us say central India does show the occupation of the authors of Upper Paleolithic sites as much as it has the evidence of Upper Paleolithic sites further north. So you have a range of people occurring up or making Upper Paleolithic tools along the Narmada. Then they cross the Narmada. And the moment they cross the Narmada, they start occupying the valley of the Godavari district, especially Adilabad district of Telangana. Now here you have Upper Paleolithic sites which seem to be a little late because there are many gravation points. There are not many knife points, there are many gravation points. There are no solitary leaf points, there is no bone tools, but there are beautiful gravation points. So here you have another stretch west to east, another stretch which is having Upper Paleolithic sites, all surface finds, not excavated. Vidya-mitra is the only one which is excavated. Let us start from the western border of Didwana, Singhi. From Singhi we come to the Narmada sites. I talk about Vidya-mitra. We come to the Telangana sites along Godavari, which is Adilabad district. Not one, there are many sites. Then what happens is that all of them seem to go straight, crossing Kaimur Range and cross into the northern territory into what is known as Belan Valley. Belan Valley also has a rich Upper Paleolithic site. So if you have to equate Upper Paleolithic tool types with the author of anatomically modern Homo sapien, you have a problem. The problem is that we do not have Upper Paleolithic evidence all over India. You have rich Upper Paleolithic sites which are found along the Narmada, along the Godavari, and along the Kaimur ranges going up to Belan Valley. Then what happened to the other areas? Classic example is Paisra. Look at Paisra. There is even post holes in Paisra. It's in Jamui district of Bihar. And you have beautiful lower Paleolithic tools continuing, and the upper layer is microliths. So lower Paleolith gives to microlith with a gap. There is an occupational gap, good enough. So Pleistocene leads to Holocene, but there is only lower Pleistocene tool types. In other words, we have to accept, there is no alternative. We have to accept that in majority of Indian sites, Lower Paleolithic and Middle Paleolithic occupies the entire stretch of Pleistocene culture. Lower Paleolithic and Middle Paleolithic occupies the entire stretch of Pleistocene culture. There is no Upper Paleolithic. And if there is an Upper Paleolithic, it is restricted in certain zones. And the zones I have talked about is the Central Indian zone, of course, Bhimbetka is epicenter, and the Godavari zone with Adilabad as epicenter, and the Maikal Ranges zone with Belan as an epicenter. Renigunta, of course, falls below the Godavari basin, but doesn't matter, this is one of the branches. So Upper Paleolithic in India is a very restricted occurrence. If we stand up and say there is no Upper Paleolithic in India, we are wrong. And if we say there is Upper Paleolithic in India, but the third gravel context or its Pleistocene depositional context is missing, I think we are more correct. Because if we accept that the blade tools found with the flake tools in the second gravel of all the river sites refers to Upper Paleolithic, then there is Upper Paleolithic all over India. So the point is, typologically, Upper Paleolithic is not missing. Any Middle Paleolithic site, there are flake tools, there are blade tools. So you take the blade tools literally out and say these are Upper Paleolithic and the flake tools are Middle Paleolithic. You can't do that. So you have to have some kind of a third gravel where only blade tools occur before you can declare it as Upper Paleolithic. So I think I make myself pretty clear that Upper Paleolithic in India is a problem of context and not content. It is the context which is missing. And if the context is missing, there is no problem. The problem is of the river's behavior. The problem is of ecology. We do not have third gravel in many parts of Indian river. In fact, in a river called Luni, you have only one gravel. So you can't say which Pleistocene deposit is it. So you have a problem of context, and that makes Upper Paleolithic a very big problem in Indian archaeology. But then problem makes the subject more interesting. We have talked about the sites, which are not many, where a typical Upper Paleolithic in terms of types of tools discovered has been claimed along with the stratigraphic context. Because stratigraphic context is very important to declare any blade as Upper Paleolithic. Because you can have blade even in Lower Paleolithic during Acheulean period. But there is an excavated site which has come from Sarguja district along this river Son, which is not very far from Rewa and Allahabad down in the south. And there, this site has been excavated by a Californian professor, Desmond Clark, who was famous for his South African study in the river Zambezi. And the same gentleman came to Allahabad and excavated this site. This is called Bagor 2. Bagor 2 is a site which is very interesting. It has Upper Paleolithic tools. Of course, all the usual tools that we have found in Belan. There's not very much difference. But in addition to the Belan variety of Upper Paleolithic tools, which comes from, of course, datable layer, you have now dates for them. And this a kind of a elevated region has been found on which a fractured stone has been seen, placed in an adequate manner, and it has inner waves in the stone. You can see many stones in volcanic stones in which there will be ridges inside in an elevated manner, and these are of course known to any geologist as layers of development. But this stone has been kept on an elevated part, and this was taken by Desmond Clark as a prehistoric shrine. That since it is on an elevated part, as if a platform has been created, almost similar to what has been found in Turkey, the site called Çatalhöyük, where a platform has been found where the skull was seen, skull of sheep has been kept. Now that is Çatalhöyük is a Mesolithic site, but here in Paleolithic site, and this is very interesting, nowhere in Europe you find Paleolithic sites with a shrine. But here Desmond Clark claimed, and it is a datable site, there is a carbon-14 date for it. So we know it is Upper Paleolithic, there is no problem of the context. But the additional information we have is the form of a shrine. So here you have a shrine which shows a well enough development of a large enough population. You don't make a shrine if you're a single person. There must have been a large occupation, and we don't have evidence of large occupation near this site because there is no horizontal excavation done. It's a vertical excavation. But the fact remains that from Belan down south, you go about 200 kilometers down is Belan, is Bagor 2, and down south you go and you come to almost the parts where Andhra shows the Mesolithic sites or Upper Paleolithic sites occurring one after the another. So you have an Upper Paleolithic concentration along certain lines of development, certain lines that I have talked about earlier. But the question remains, what happens to the Upper Paleolithic in the rest of India? Lower Paleolithic in India is galore. Anywhere you go, there are hand axes and cleavers, possibly not so much if you cross the Brahmaputra to the east. But from Rajasthan down to Tamil Nadu and over to North India, you have all over hand axes and cleavers occurring. But when it comes to Upper Paleolithic, you seem to have problem. The problem is they are not found in a specific context. They're found mixed with lower Paleolithic tools or with middle Paleolithic tools, but never as a separate context of third gravel. Now that you have a date for Bagor, you have a date for Belan, you have a date for Renigunta, more or less we're accepting that Upper Paleolithic development is witnessed in India, all over India, or most of the part of India from within the Middle Paleolithic base. So the question of origin and dispersal remains. All along in Paleolithic culture, we have asked these two questions. Where is the origin and how is the origin and how it disperses all over India? So the origin, like in Middle Paleolithic, we said origin is indigenous. But can we say Upper Paleolithic has an indigenous origin? We have no possibility of saying that it is exogenous. And the moment you say it is indigenous origin, you have to accept that anatomically modern Homo sapiens did not bring it. So the out of the Africa model is negated if you accept it as indigenous. Now this is the contradiction of the two entirely different disciplines. One is archaeology, the other is molecular genetics. So out of the Africa model will be totally denied if you take it as indigenous development, and I have no reason to believe that it is not indigenous development. Especially with Bhimbetka and Belan, the raw material is same, the tools continue to occur in a gradual manner, and there is no doubt that it has developed from within. So, archaeologically speaking, we are not in a very happy relationship with molecular genetics. You have molecular genetics, their own platform to talk about. We have our own platform to talk about. There are some who try to compromise one with the other by saying there must have been a late sapien or a late erectus who got mixed with the incoming out of the Africa Homo sapiens sapien or early batches of Homo sapiens sapien who mixed with them. So you have a late erectus or early sapien mixing with the migrating Homo sapiens sapien. Now that's a difficult proposition because basically we do not accept a mating of of between two species, and late sapien may be a species where we have to accept that it could mate with Homo sapiens sapien. Otherwise, you cannot expect or you cannot explain the two different subjects. One is entirely different and talk of molecular genetics. The other is entirely different and talk of archaeology. Basically, there is one point I would like to talk about. There is a site called Harthobauri. It is in Ethiopia. In Harthobauri, you have found a late sapien skeleton, full skeleton. Not one, three skeletons, I think. And with that, you find a very developed Acheulean culture. Now, it is dated about 160,000. So, I'm not talking of the upper Paleolithic period. I'm not talking about the 50,000 years that the molecular genetics talks about the migration. But Harthobauri gives an idea that there was a development of late erectus or early sapien occurring in the Horn of Africa, and these early sapiens or late erectus may have been the ones who entered India, and therefore there was no problem of intermixture. So they mixed with the people who were also late sapiens in India. But then they did not necessarily create blade tools. So that is why you do not have blade tools and Upper Paleolithic tool types all over in India. So in a pan-Indian context, you have to accept that Upper Paleolithic is very well demonstrated in terms of content, but it lacks proper context. Thank you.